along today. I thought I'd talk about global warming and climate change, or global boiling, as it's now being marketed in the media. So like at the minute, the odious Sadiq Khan, who I can't stand, has got this ULEZ scheme going in London where he's put cameras up everywhere to find people who can't afford to buy a newer, more environmentally friendly car. Which doesn't really make sense to me. If they can't afford to buy a newer car, fining them isn't going to solve that situation, is it? It's just going to make it more difficult for them to afford to buy a newer car. But of course, it's not about getting them to buy a new car, it's about filling Sadiq Khan's pockets. I went to a meeting a couple of months ago about these 15-minute neighbourhoods. It's in a town that I don't actually live in, but I just wanted to go there, one, to get some idea of what it's all about and what the councils actually think of it all, what their plans are, and also just to support the local people who were pretty much unanimously against it. There was sort of over 300 people in this meeting, and the only 3 people there that supported the 15-minute cities, or neighbourhoods, whatever you want to call it, were the 3 councillors. But I naively thought that if you were in, say, a 10-minute neighbourhood, as they call it, that meant you could travel for 10 minutes before you'd have to then turn around and go home. But it's not. A 10-minute neighbourhood is 5 minutes there, 5 minutes back. So it's actually even more restrictive than I thought, and than I naively thought. There was typical political speak from the councillors, which really didn't help their case. Like the first councillor who spoke spent about 10 minutes babbling on about her life story, which really wasn't particularly relevant at all, and was very obviously just to try and get the sympathy vote and get people on side with her. But luckily no one fell for it. Like I was like rolling my eyes when she started. But as the meeting went on, other people mentioned it, and I was glad that other people had cottoned on, that she was just giving us a sob story and wasting our time. And another councillor there, he was asked a question. He was asked, like, we're fine with you making these 15-minute neighbourhoods as long as you can promise us there won't be any restrictions on our movement. There won't be cameras put up and fines on people for leaving their zone too many times. It's not going to be used just to generate money for the council. And this councillor guy said, well, we have no plans to at this time. And everyone was like, and he kept repeating the same thing. Every time everyone said to him, look, can you guarantee us there will be no fines restricting people's movement? He kept saying the same answer, which was, we have no plans to at this time, which is obvious political doublespeak bullshit, you know, covering his back. But imagine asking someone if they plan on killing you and they say, oh, well, I've got no plans to at this time. Well, that's not going to fill you with confidence, is it? But in a way, I appreciate that he was at least sort of honest about it, even though he didn't outright say it's not off the table. That is basically what he was saying. By saying they have no plans to at this time means that it's not off the table, it is a possibility. So he was kind of honest about it at least, and that was really the end of it. Like, no one was ever going to support them after that. So I think the plans for 15-minute neighbourhoods, 10-minute neighbourhoods, whatever they want to call them, have been scrapped there now. But someone brought up an interesting point at the meeting, saying like the selling point of these 15-minute neighbourhoods is that there'll be local services for local people. You'll have your own post office and your own GPs and your own dentists and shop, and you won't have to travel too far to get to all these local services. And someone said, well, yeah, that's what life was like 20, 30 years ago, until you took it all away. And now you're acting like it's some revolutionary idea to give people these local services back again. It's ridiculous. But this time, with the possibility that there are going to be fines and restrictions put on us in exchange for having these services again that we used to have anyway, until they were all taken away because big businesses took over everything. So all the small mum and pop stores shut down and all the local services. And of course the main argument for these 15-minute neighbourhoods is that it will help save the planet, because it will stop people driving and the climate emergency and save the environment and all this BS, which I don't believe at all. And it's not because I don't care about the environment. I care greatly about the environment. It breaks my heart seeing it destroyed. But the thing is, with governments and councils, they're like abusive partners. Like, you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. You can't let them get away with anything. The more you let them get away with, the more they'll push it. But the thing you'll notice whenever the media or politicians or councils talk about how much they care about the environment and how much we have to save the environment, it's always connected to either fines, higher taxes, higher bills, or more restrictions on us, on our movements and taking away our freedoms. They never mention the environment when it comes to the endless destruction that we see of the natural world to build these god-awful bloody high-density housing estates everywhere that you see nowadays. And it is endless. Constantly ploughing up and concreting over all of the natural world, destroying animal habitats, which then kills the animals, destroying all the trees and plants. They never have a problem with that. The government have pretty much abandoned the idea of the green belt, which was there to protect the environment, to ensure that our countryside isn't completely eradicated. The government have pretty much just given up on the green belt now, and they're happy to concrete over the whole lot. I think they'd quite happily concrete over the whole island. Like, the UK would just be one big megacity, and yet they then pretend that they care about the environment. I mean, it's bullshit. It's purely to try and trick us all into going along with them taking all our money and all our freedoms. Like, I see more and more farmland being shut off. It's no longer being farmed. Farmers fence it off and leave it to go to seed. And it fills my heart with dread, because I just think, oh, they're planning on selling that in a few years' time for bloody housing estates. Because I'd love to own a big bit of farmland. I would do so much with it. I'd really diversify. I'd have, you know, the fields for growing vegetables and that, like they do, and for livestock. But then I'd have one field for pumpkins, so that people can come and pick pumpkins at Halloween. I'd have 1 acre or so with apple trees and pears and plums and cherries. Like, I'd try and produce as much of a variety of food as I could, and then maybe open a little farm shop in one of the barns. But of course it's not that easy. Like, opening your own little farm shop is very difficult and expensive, because the government don't want regular people doing that. They just want the big businesses to own all the stores and monopolise all the food sales. Local farms can't sell their goods to local businesses, because the local businesses aren't local businesses. They're all big, mainstream companies and corporations, like, I don't know, Londis or whatever. There aren't your typical mum and pop stores anymore. So local growers don't have anywhere to sell their produce to. About a decade or so ago, I used to work at an orchard, a really lovely job, and they used to sell all their fruit and veg to the local Tesco's, which was about 3 miles down the road. But eventually they lost all the custom, because the Tesco's was importing all their food from Europe, all their fruit and veg, which once again, these government agencies, all these companies that jump on the virtue signalling bandwagon as a marketing gimmick, saying, oh, we care so much about the environment, global emissions, blah blah blah. But they're all importing everything from abroad. They don't buy from local growers anymore. And yet they claim that they care about the environment. Well, that's got to be causing more emissions than, people driving their cars to the shops or whatever. It's ridiculous. Importing everything from across the sea and then pretend you care about emissions in the environment. Causing local farms and orchards to shut down, which then leads to them being bulldozed and concreted over for housing estates, because they can't sell goods to local stores anymore. But the thing is, I agree there are too many cars on the roads. Like, even here, because we're reasonably near a road in this bit of forestry here, I can hear the constant roar of engines in the background. It really pisses me off to no end, because where I live, I'm not near a road, so I never hear cars, engines roaring usually. But whenever I stay in a hotel in the city, or even come here near the road, as beautiful as it is here, God, the endless roar of bloody traffic. And planes. Planes fly over here. Planes only fly over here when I'm filming for some reason. The rest of the time it's nice and quiet, but as soon as I get a camera out, bloody planes appear out of nowhere and start flying all over the place. They also seem to be some of the slowest bastard planes in existence. They take bloody ages to fly over as well. But anyway, even though it annoys me that there are cars everywhere, I mean, you try driving through a state or anything nowadays, it's like an obstacle course. There are cars piled up everywhere. They look really scruffy and untidy. But it's, you know, you can't blame people for that. We didn't ask for the country to be overpopulated, and we didn't ask for society to be built around vehicular transport. So you can't then punish people by taking away their ability to have vehicular independence. And I think that's what this push for electric vehicles is all about as well. They supposedly want to try and force us all into electric vehicles by 2030, I think it is, which seems unworkable. And once again, it's under the guise of being better for the environment to scrap millions of petrol cars and build millions of electric cars, which actually create more pollution in their production than petrol cars do. So it would take, like, owning an electric vehicle 10 years to offset the damage caused by creating the damn thing in the first place. They've then got to completely restructure all the gas stations in the country to pull out all the gas pumps and trash and dispose of that, and then replace them with electric sockets, and that's apparently going to be better for the environment as well. I mean, it's a massive amount of work and destruction and waste is going to be caused, all to supposedly save the environment. Once again, it's a environmental saving measure, which doesn't make sense when you actually look into it. But the thing with electric vehicles is it's all about the marketing. Because there's no fumes coming out of the back of it, you can tell people that it's better for the environment and they'll believe it because there's no noticeable pollution. But of course, when you actually look into electric vehicles and the pollution caused by building them, you realise that they're just as bad for the environment as petrol cars. It's just a hidden damage, it's a hidden pollution, so they can market electric vehicles to people pretending that it's better for the environment. It's quite sad, it's quite depressing when you look into all this stuff and you realise how much we're lied to by the government and by companies. But I think the reason the government like electric vehicles so much is that it's going to restrict people's movement more, because electric vehicles can't travel as far as petrol cars can on a full tank, and there's going to be a lot of people who probably can't afford to go out and buy a brand new electric car. But I mean, electric cars take quite a while to charge. It's not like a petrol car where it takes about a minute or two to fill the tank. So I don't know what the fuel stations are going to be like if everyone's there for 10 minutes or so charging their electric vehicle. You'd imagine there'd be massive queues. And for those who think it's all a bit conspiratorial, saying, oh, the government wouldn't lie to us and just manipulate us to control us and get money, blah, blah, blah. Look into the food pyramid in America that was supposedly designed to help people decide how to have a really healthy diet and what foods they should be eating the most and what foods they should be eating the least. And it's basically backwards. Like, they encourage people to eat mostly wheat products, you know, white bread, pasta, cereal, as if that was the healthiest option and that's what the majority of your diet should be made of. But it shouldn't at all. They did that because the wheat industry paid them to, and quite quickly obesity levels rose very steeply, very quickly in America after this food pyramid was published, because people took it at face value that, oh, this is what a healthy diet should be. I should be eating mostly wheat products, bread and cereal and that kind of crap. And they all got fat because the government did not care about people's health. They cared about who was paying them to basically market wheat products. Cereal is the one that always gets me. Like, the cereal companies, the cereal industry have done an amazing job at marketing cereal to people, making people think that cereal is the ideal food to eat first thing in the morning to start your day with, but it really isn't. I mean, cereals, you might as well just have a slice of cake. Cereal's a load of crap. But the majority of people seem to believe that cereal is what you should have in the morning, and almost look at me cockeyed when I say that I don't. It really is beautiful around here. Even though the sound of roaring engines from the road and the airbase gets a bit annoying, it is a really beautiful bit of forestry. I'd like to think anyone who watches my videos realises how much I love the natural world and the environment. But I don't want people to think I don't care about the environment just because I don't believe all this emissions hysteria. But if you look into it, a lot of it just doesn't make sense. Even the whole idea of getting to net zero in the UK. But the thing with net zero is the UK produces less than 1% of all global emissions. Less than 1%. So if the UK gets to net zero, it won't make a blind bit of difference. And the government aren't completely stupid, they know this. So then you've got to ask yourself, why are they desperately pushing all this net zero stuff in the UK, claiming it's for the good of the environment, when they know that it isn't, when they know that it won't make a blind bit of difference? I feel like not enough people realise this, that the UK produces less than 1% of global emissions. Net zero in the UK will not do anything. It won't change anything. Not in terms of helping the environment anyway, but it will cause massive social upheaval and changes to people's lives. So the same people who are destroying the green belt and don't have a problem with constantly churning up and conquering over the natural world want us to get to net zero because they care so much about the environment, even though it won't actually make a difference to the environment. That's got to make you ask questions about what's really going on. What are the real motives behind it all?
Lost in a